How is everybody? So glad that you can join. This is going to be a phenomenal time. I'm sorry I don't have intro music because I feel like I should have had intro music. I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited too. I hope you guys brought a sheet of paper, some notes, notes. You'll have some little exercises we're going to do. They'll be towards the closer end of the presentation, but I wanted to make the presentation a little bit more interactive. I know we all have been sitting, listening intently, taking notes, but there's going to be some things that you can actually do and implement. All right. Yes. All right. OneNote. I wish I could be as multi-talented as people who can do OneNote and listen to a session. I can't type and listen at the same time. I can only handwrite. Like me and pen and the paper, we just have a love affair when it comes to taking notes. All right. Well, let's get started. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm so glad you can come to this workshop on how to create spaces to fail. I have my moderator with me, Mega. Unfortunately, I cannot hear her, right? So I'm basically reading lips at this point.
All right. So
you can see her type it in the chat. So let me just introduce myself really quickly. My name is Kenyetta. Mega's going to introduce me more. So I'm just wanted to say who I was prior to everybody getting in here. And then let me just slide it over to Mega, even though I can't hear her.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you all can hear me. Thumbs up if yes. All right. So perfect. Hello, everyone. So welcome to this workshop where you will get a new perspective about failure and how to use that as a tool for success. But before we get started, let me do a quick introduction. I'm Megha Rastogi, a group product manager at Okta, where I'm working on creating passwordless and secure access management solutions. Sorry, yeah. So I've been in product management for more than a decade across different domains, verticals, geographies, and I've certainly had my share of failure to learn from. Today, I'm super excited to host this workshop with an inspiring leader who you just heard from, Kenyetta Hall. Kenyetta has over 15 years of experience working in corporate, which she has leveraged in her work with SMBs, startups, and nonprofits in both the private and public sector. During her time, she's researched new technologies, created strategies on how to engage members in digital spaces and how that relates to customer experience. She also worked with startups from ideation through MVP stages and has worked with small businesses to create strategies for growth. Along this journey, Kenyetta has had the opportunity to be a founding member of a startup, build a founding team, and help other business owners become intentional about growth and sustainability within their business. So with that, let's hear it from Kenyetta.
Thank you. Angie, thank you so much for telling me to turn on the captions. That made the biggest difference in the world. I feel like now I can follow along. Well, hello, everybody. I am so glad that you guys have made it to this workshop about how to create a space to fail. One, let me just level set and ask everybody a question. How many times in your life have you just felt like a complete failure? Yes, Christina. Yes, exactly. So many, countless times. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And and it's not unfortunate. It's not unfortunate. Schlepper don't even feel it these days. I know it's easier said than done, but yes, We have all felt like a failure at some point in our lives, multiple times, right? Um, and so that's why I really wanted to focus on the space of failure, right? And the first thing I want to do is level set with you all on before we get into how to create a space to fail. I want to level set on you all with why we actually need the spaces to fail. So, as you can see, hey y'all, I'm Kenyetta. And as Mega has said it before, I'm the founder of the Catalyst HQ, where I help owners and entrepreneurs reset, refocus, and reimagine how they do business, specifically with specifically with entrepreneurs and companies who are really focused on building products. So, first, I want to start by saying when you take risks, you will learn that there would be times when you succeed and there be times when you fail, and both are equally as important. And I think in today's society, we don't give equal weight to failure as we do success. And as you can see, if but if failing is equally important as success, it definitely is equal as important, is equally as important to success. Um, the answer to that, of course, is yes. But here's the thing that we all need to learn, right? Is that actually failure is counterintuitive to how we've been actually taught about success. Would everybody agree with that? Would everybody agree that failure is actually counterintuitive to how we've been taught about success? Exactly. There is a lot of failure is not an option. People don't really want to talk about failure. So we have this whole negative connotation surrounding the word failure. So let me tell you guys where that started from. Because, just like a lot of psychologists and therapists say, where does it all start? It starts with your childhood. Yes, admit if you're not first, you're last, but it all starts with your childhood, right? From the time that we exit the womb, we are taught that success is equal to perfection in literally everything that we do, right? If you think about it, when we go to school, what do we learn? That you have to be the best. You have to get the A's. If you don't get the A's, you're basically not rewarded. In sports, if you're not first, you're last, right? Even when you think about your jobs, right? We have annual reviews, and basically they tell us what we've done wrong for the year, right? It wasn't until this whole startup culture came that it became this whole thing about being okay to fail. And really, that has really only been okay for those in that startup community. In traditional business and corporate life, that's still a thing, right? We don't fail. We try to find other words that replaces this word failure. Would you all agree to that? Would you all agree that success is really equal to perfection? Exactly. Um, and what that does, and what I don't even think we realize it does to us, is it gets to a point where we begin to internalize failing as being a failure, aka it being a characteristic of who you are versus something that you've done or something that you can overcome. Right. It yes, it exactly, Lauren. It bugs me when a company claims that their employees take risks, but they don't mean that. You're disposable if you fail. Exactly. So everything about the culture as to which we were raised, what society has told us is that success is always equivalent to perfection. Right. And now we have so many times that we don't think of something as failure, something that we can actually come back from. Right. What we have done is said now that we're a failure, which is completely disingenuous, or disingenuous to how we've been completely disingenuous to what the and counterproductive to what they actually want us to do. So to meet society's definition of success, what do? We kill ourselves to be perfect. We become so scared to even make a mistake that we don't try at all, right? At the end of the day, what has happened is that let somebody else define success for us. Right. that we don't even lean into making a mistake, right? Remember, that's really reserved for the startup culture where you can lean into making a mistake. And let's be very clear, mistakes are really not incentivized, right? As much as people would like to say that they are, there is no mistake that you can think of in the world that we live in that's really incentivized unless you're moving to that startup culture. Definitely super silencing. Um, super silencing. So really, let me jump into why we actually need these spaces to fail. So really, these are some three reasons why we need spaces to fail. One, it builds resilience, right? See, what we forget is that in failing, you have to remember how to get back up. And really that's where the lesson is learned. People don't understand, as women, specifically women, right? And as we internalize this thing of failure, what we forget is that we have to actually build a muscle to get back up, right? What happens is we don't start really building that muscle of failing and getting back up to try again until we become adults and they quote unquote set in their ways. I don't really believe in setting your ways. I believe that people make choices to not change, right? First actions and learning. Yes, it is okay to fail as long as you learn from that. Exactly. But and in addition to not only learning from failure, you're beginning to change how you think about failure. I think the key thing to understand is that one, once you begin to change how you recover from failure, it's going to build resilience, right? Because resilience is the key to getting to the next level. And what people miss oftentimes is that you have to go through something in order to actually to sustain at the next level. So if you're not failing, what are you doing, right? If you're not failing and getting that experience, if you're not failing and learning how to, when you're getting up out of that failure, learning how to look at the situation differently and saying, oh, should I move this way? Or should I go the opposite way? Or should I just disregard this altogether? Right? Exactly. And so what we need to understand is that you have to go through those valleys. In product, you have to go through those failures with your customers, um, uh, just to fully understand that when you get to the next level, there's a space there. You have built the skin of resilience, right? And whether that's in corporate, whether that's in your family life, whether that's with your friends and family, right? Is that you have to build the skin of resilience, right? But you can only do that if you go through something. The next thing is learning through action. It teaches us to be comfortable learning through action. All of us are in product, right? And the first thing we do is we lean into strategy, which that is actually the first step, but it's not the only step because strategy is nothing without action, right? And sometimes we have to get out there and prove that the strategy we created is correct. In a lean startup, we call it hypothesis. But at the end of the day, we need to get out there and start to get comfortable with taking action, right? And that's in all forms of our life, whether we're building a product for our company, whether we're deciding to start a new venture of our own, we have to get comfortable with putting the words and the plan that we so graciously created into action. And the third thing that we learn from failure is being uncomfortable, right? You have to give yourself space to experience growth, right? And oftentimes, again, society doesn't really want us to push outside that comfort zone. That's exactly why we're not failing, right? We're internalizing that word because it gets us stagnant, right? What it does is it stops movement, right? So we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable with failing so that we can give ourselves an opportunity to experience growth, right? And each time that we fail at something, we actually have to get back up, which means that we're getting back up with the basis of experience and knowledge that we didn't have before. And I think because we're so used to always looking at what we do wrong, we don't even give ourselves the credit of being able to have that new eye, right? That new ability to see things differently now that we've had some experience in our back pocket, now that we've possibly created some more tools for the toolkit, right? So now that how why we needed a space to fail, and now that you know what failure can teach you, right? And now that we are understanding, and I'm gonna leave you with this, the last thing is that failure should be equivalent to practice. It should not be equivalent to success. I mean, it should not be, it should be, it should, excuse me, it should be equivalent to practice. Success should not be equivalent to perfection, right? Because if we're truly successful, then success should be equivalent to what? Growth, right? Success should be equivalent to growth. And the only way that you can ever achieve growth, right, is if you're practicing. And in order for you to be practicing, you have to be failing, right? And that's why I make that connection between practice and failing, because I don't know if you guys play sports, but I played sports. I played basketball up until my sophomore year in college, and yes, I'm 5'1", but I still did it, right? Um, but what it did teach me is that practice was a space that I can fail, because I began to think and look differently. I was able to hone in on my skill set in practice, right? To where it now, when I'm looking at, oh, if I made the wrong move, Kenyetta, straighten up your elbow next time. Kenyetta, next time your pivot foot was off, right? So now I'm able to make the adjustments because I'm seeing the world, I'm seeing the failure with a different eye. At first, I used to cry, right? I used to cry and be like, I'm never going to get this ish right. I can't believe that. But then it became a time where I'm like, I know what to do next. Let me start to implement that. And I saw the change. Right. So, all right, 5-5 post player Kelly, that's what I'm talking about. Yes. So you fully understand what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Is really using that practice area as a space to fail. All right. So now this is the time that you're going to need your pens and pencils. Pens, pencils. Do people even still use pencils? I don't. But now you're gonna need a sheet of paper, because now we're gonna get to talking about how to create spaces to fail. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you, first step to how to create this space to fail is to stop counting yourself out. How many of you all, I'm asking you a question now, how many of you all have counted yourself out? Have gotten so close to the finish line and just automatically gave up because you thought you was gonna fail at it? Me too, more times than I would like to admit as well. Me too. It's so many times in my life where it's yep, big imposter syndrome vibes. Yes, it's so many times I know that in my life that I literally was right there on the cusp of everything that I worked for, and I made a decision to let it go because I was too scared to fail. So this is what I want you guys to do. And this is what I often tell my clients to do. At the beginning of anything that we do, I want you to write down 3 to 5 wins you've had this year, and I want you to write down 3 to 5 losses you had this year. I'm gonna give you guys 1 minute, and I wish I had Jeopardy music to do this. I'll give you guys 1 minute. So write down 3 to 5 wins, and I want you to write down 3 to 5 losses. Let me let you know something. Let me write something down too, because I need to do this exercise as well. This isn't just an exercise for y'all. Right, Meg, you got your. I see your notepad and pen too. Right. All right. I'm gonna give you guys like 20 more seconds. I can guarantee that those 3 to 5 wins are real hard for y'all right now. But those losses, you probably got 7, but I only need 3 to 5. All right. Quick question, everybody. 'Cause that was about 20 seconds, or maybe it was about 15. Either way, let me ask you guys a question. How hard was it for you to write down 3 to 5 wins? Okay, Nyla, you better struggle with those losses, girl. Okay. 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 Danica, I love it. Okay, stuck on the wins. Okay, yeah, I can already see right now. Y'all. Okay, exactly. Yep, they're hard. Stuck on both. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to keep this list. And what I want you to do is your objective for yep, it does take a bit of digging for the wins. And you know why? That's our mindsets, right? Because the first thing that you're always taught to do is to focus on the things you have done bad at, right? That's what we're taught to do. Focus on the things we've done bad at. It's almost like celebrate your losses and then talk as less as possible about your wins. You really think so, Ashley, that your wins were definitely your losses? I'm pretty sure you got some wins that just were just straight up wins, no matter how big or small. And that's another thing I want you guys to understand is that make sure you're counting every win, no matter how big or how small. Especially as women, we tend to actually significantly take steps back on small wins, right? Today I made up my bed. That's actual win for me because I actually hate making up my bed, right? I'm trying to be better about it. Yes, all the wins count, every last one of them. Because the counting your wins gives you the confidence to go to do other things, right? Your losses tell you what you need to work at, but those wins push you forward, right? All right. So, point number 2, and that strategy number 2, failure is a numbers game. Failing is a numbers game, people. It is not something that you should be trying to perfect. You need to fail as many times as possible because you need to start training that muscle of recovery. Yes, okay. First off, Anna, I like a brag document. Now, I haven't heard of that, but if you see me use that someplace, I'm gonna have to give you credit because I like the brag document idea. I like that. So let's talk about this. Failing is a numbers game. Failing is a numbers game. So I want you guys to write down at least one situation, 1 to 2 situations that you count as a failure, is like I've seen fail so many times that you've counted that you recovered from, right? Because oftentimes when we're failing, it's we think of worst possible scenarios all the time. All that we think about is worst possible scenarios, right? And so because we think of that, we think that we can't come back from that. But oftentimes there's not a failure in any one of your lives that you haven't come back from. Oh, a cheer folder. Man, I'm telling you, brag. I'm writing. Hold on. I got to stop my presentation real quick so I can write down brag documents, cheer folder. Yeah, I mean, this is a good teaching session for everybody. So if you guys could write down at least 1 to 2 situations where you failed and how you rebounded for them, because I want you guys to keep a running log of the ways that you've learned to recover. Because at any point in time when you feel like you're in a situation where you think you can't recover, your past performance tells you differently every single time. And I want you guys to remember that your past performance tells you differently every single time when you think that you're failing and can't recover. Your track record of being in women in product is showing you different. All right, strategy number 3 on how to create a space to fail for yourself is tap into a community of like-minded individuals. Tap into the community of like-minded individuals. However, I have some criteria around those like-minded individuals within your community. All right, so here you go. Here you go, right here. This is what I need for your community, that your community that you tap into should possess. They should be able to hold you accountable in the community of like-minded individuals. They should be able to tell you to hold you to the responsible things, the things you set out to do, and hold you responsible to that. All right. You should be able to be vulnerable in that space, right? Exactly, Divya. You 100% change the pattern going forward. Um, Vulnerability. You need to have a soft place to land. When you're in a community, these people should hold you accountable, hold you to the responsibilities that you've set forth for yourself. You should be able to be vulnerable in that space. There is growth and vulnerability. You should be able to have a soft place to land. There should never be an excuse for somebody to deliver bad information to you in a way that you can't receive that, right? So when I refer to a soft place to land, failure sometimes is hard. We are never going to negate the fact that failure is hard, right? Failure does not feel good. It may not feel good all the time. It may not feel good for 2-3 weeks, but you need to be able to tap into a community that will always give you a soft place to land for you to be able to have those emotions and move through those emotions, right? And the last and final one is that people who will celebrate you. Being a career woman can oftentimes be a lonely space. Being an entrepreneur can be a lonely space. Sometimes being a woman can be a lonely space. And you need people to hype you up. Everybody needs a personal hype man. You need a group like Women in Product that when you can go in there, you can say your wins, you can talk about your losses, you can be vulnerable and talk about the spaces that you think you're coming up short. They can help you resolve those. They can hold you accountable in the spaces that they can hold you accountable in that space. They can level you up. Yes, Nyla, there is a time of grief after you have failed at something, and you need a space to where you're able to process through that grief. Because what is it that we want to do? We want to get to the level of resilience so that the next level, we've had that experience. So we know how to deal with that failure at that level. So now we're up here. So that's not something we need to learn anymore, right? Exactly. So my next thing I would like for you guys to do is to list out the communities that you're a part of to see if they check the boxes on the prior slide. I think it's important that we understand that we want quality over quantity when it comes to being in spaces of support for ourselves. And so make sure and write down this list of communities that you're in and see if the communities that you're in check the box, check those I can't say my words today. That you're able to check off all of those things, such as does it hold you accountable? Does it give you a soft space to land? See if the communities that which you're in, it does that for you. And if it doesn't, then you need to be finding a different community to be a part of. And I think that's really important when you start to think about failure. It is really important when you start to think about moving past failure to think differently, right? You need to have people in your space that are going to push you to think differently. That when you can't cheer for yourself, when you can't be there for yourself, they can be there for you. And we do not push that enough, right? This is your space too, also to practice. Remember, failure is equivalent to practice, right? And success is equivalent to growth. And if these spaces are providing that for you, man, you are winning. Yes, a community can definitely be a group of friends and mentors, most definitely be a group of friends and mentors, and make sure that your friends and mentors are able in a space to do the criteria on the prior slide, right? Exactly, Christina. That's why you have to find it'd behoove you to find some groups outside of your friends and family who can help you with that. Like there's plenty of groups in Women in Product or Connect. And where there's not a group that you can join, actively create the group for yourself. You'll be amazed how many people would love to tap into something that you're creating, right? They just may simply not have the wherewithal to do so, or they didn't know it was available to them. Or sometimes somebody just needed somebody to say, hey, do you need a partner in crime on that one? Do you need a sister in work? Right? Um, so I think it's important that you have that space of like-minded individuals that's going to push you to the next level, and not only push you there, but hold you there and push you further. All right, and this is going to be a little hard. The next one is going to be a little hard one, right? Um, it's to pivot or recommit. So let me tell you why I say pivot or recommit. I agree with that. I agree with that, Allison. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about is the ability to pivot or recommit. Okay. Sometimes when you fail at something, it's okay to throw in the towel. Okay. I think that we have been taught to go so hard all the time and to just to keep going and trying. Sometimes the lane or space that you created for yourself, in the direction that you're going, you need to pivot and go a different way. You need to retire off that pathway and you need to take another pathway. And we need to be okay that sometimes you don't, it's okay to throw in the towel. Yes, is knowing when to walk away. You have to start to get comfortable when understanding when something is no longer for you, when it no longer serves a purpose in your life that it was serving before, right? Or it may never have served you a purpose and it was something that you needed to learn. But we also need to be comfortable. So we also need to be comfortable with walking away. The caveat to that is understanding the difference between pivot and recommitting. Well, Susan, what to do if you can't walk away? Right? Let's talk a little bit about that. Megan, can we hold that question of what to do when you can't walk away? Because I think that we can address that. Because I think a lot of people, especially women, are going through something where they can't walk away from. And so exactly, Nyla. So just because you can take it doesn't mean necessarily you should. That's right. But let's talk about recommitment. Okay. So when we're talking about pivoting and recommitting, what I want us to think about is how oftentimes are you actually, when you're thinking about the pivot or recommitting, that you're actually listening to your gut. Because oftentimes when you want to pivot and throw in a towel, like I said before, the caveat to that is recommitment, which is saying, was I actually committed and went all in on the idea or pathway that I set out on? Because oftentimes you will encounter failures because you simply did not make the full commitment that you needed to make in order to get to that success that you were waiting for, or the success that you wanted, right? And that you have to understand that you did not make the full commitment. There are so many times in my life where I did not fully commit and I was really upset at the outcome. And in reality, and I may have thrown in the towel too early, is because I didn't ask myself, number one, was I listening to my gut, right? So when you think about pivoting and recommitting, you need to start listening to your gut. Your intuition has oftentimes told you everything that you needed to know. They've told you when it's time to walk away. Your gut intuition has told you when it's time to stay. Your gut and intuition has told you so many things that oftentimes we don't lean into, right? So the next thing you need to be looking at when you're thinking about whether it's time to pivot or recommit is to look at the current reality, right? When you start to feel it in your gut, there are signs all around you that's giving you a clue of whether you need to pivot out of this direction for your career, or whether you need to make a deeper commitment to the work, right? So start looking at your current reality and seeing along with your gut, what is everything telling you, right? Start trusting yourself. In essence, that's what I want you to start doing, is trusting yourself, trusting your ability to make decisions, trusting that this is the right decision, and also knowing that even if it isn't the right decision, 99% of the decisions you make, you can make a different decision. Does it come with consequences? Yes, but such is life, right? That's a life thing, right? But fully trust that. Fully open yourself up to the experience of trusting yourself. The third thing I want you to think about is promises made versus promises kept, right? A lot of times we make a lot of promises to ourselves, and because of our lack of commitment to that, we need to start reevaluating, did we actually keep those promises, right? And sometimes we didn't keep those promises because maybe it's not the pathway that we need to go. And maybe sometimes we didn't keep those promises because we weren't fully committed to them in the first place. And so that requires you to be radically honest with yourself about exactly what is it that you want to do, right? What does success look like to you? How can you practice that success, right? How can you practice getting to that success, right? How do you open yourself up to opportunity, right? How do you shut it down when it's time to walk away and throw in the towel, right? So I want us to begin to explore that often when we start making decisions on creating the space to fail. So just in review, one, stop counting yourself out, right? Always count your wins. Number two, fail as much as possible. It's a numbers game, right? Make sure you have a community of like-minded people that hold you accountable, responsible, let you be vulnerable, give you a soft place to land, and always celebrate your wins. And then, of course, understand when it's time to pivot or recommit. Thank you, you guys. And that's the last slide, is a thank you. And again, I help you reimagine and refocus. But most of all, what I really want you guys to remember is take the pressure off. Take the pressure off. Take the pressure off. When you alleviate the pressure from yourself to be perfect, you have opened yourself up to opportunity. Because once you've opened yourself up to opportunity, you have given yourself the freedom to fail and the freedom to recover, which means now you have given yourself the ability to be, giving yourself a chance to be successful or a chance to fail and pivot and try something new. Freedom to grow. Yes. Yes. Um, let's so now that I've concluded this portion of my PowerPoint slide, can we get back to the question with Susan? And if anybody else has any question, let's talk through some of those things. Yes, going back to please right now, if you have any questions, if you want to know some things, if you want to chat back and forth, this is a great time to do that. We definitely have time. So the first thing we're going to address is what to do if you can't walk away, right? Is it, I want to ask this question to you, is it you can't walk away right now? Or that you, because oftentimes it's not, I can't walk away forever, just might not be in the time frame that you want to walk away. And that requires a level of patience, right? Right. So when we think about whether or not we can't walk away, we need to understand the things that are tying us to that. And what are some of the first steps can we go into the direction of walking away? Sometimes walking away is a process. It doesn't mean it's a necessarily cut off, right? It doesn't mean it's kind of like a job. Sometimes when you're quitting your job, quitting is a process, right? When you're moving on to another job, think about it, it's a process. Some people go in and quit. Now, let me be clear. I've done that a couple times where I just went in and was like, hey, this it's time for me to go. But oftentimes I've planned that, right? I've set some money aside. I've, make sure my housing situation was straight. So remember that walking away is a process. It does not have to be something that is automatic.
Also, I'd like to
Exactly. Make sure your safety before you decide to walk away. Exactly. And that's what makes it a process, is that are you identifying those key things that you can control? And have you identified those key things that you can't control? Right. And when you can't control them, how can you mitigate them? Is there somebody you can talk to help you with that? And that's what a lot of situations. Anybody else have any more things they want to talk through when it comes to failure? Did I miss anything in the chat?
Kenyetta, can you hear me?
And you're right, Allison, there is no right or perfect way to get the job done. The goal is to figure it out and how to move forward. Exactly. That's where you get the learning from, right? Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Technology has failed us today, but we're still making this a success, hopefully. But what I wanted to say was that, so going back to that question, what to do if you can't walk away, I think sometimes it helps to write your pros and cons, especially if you need to let your boss know that this is not the focus, but you still want to make it clear that there are pros and cons to moving forward with this, and hopefully convince them of the cons, and at least it'll be in written, or at least they'll be aware of those pros and cons. So that's another strategy I've used in the past.
Yes, technology has failed to be able to learn from it. So I think there's a question that said, when job seeking, how would you advise presenting failures and walkaways? Let's see. So when you're talking about failures and walkaways in your job, first, a lot of times when people mess up, the main thing is not being honest, right? Remember, it's all about the narrative. So if you failed at something, you can say how you failed. They're looking for the recovery, right? Don't internalize that failing as being a failure. Start to talk about it really casually, right? Remember, in your interview process, you are interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you, right? When you walk into a situation, Margaret, where you're when you're looking for a job, there are certain criteria that job has to meet as well. When you start when you start walking in there as this job as a transactional relationship, you tend to act, right? So the first step is walking to just a job interview. Yes, I failed at that, but this is how I recovered. These are the next steps that we took in order to mitigate that issue from happening again, right? And as far as walkaways, you can be okay with saying that a position wasn't for you or your skill set. You can be okay that you learned what it was and it may not have turned out to be what you needed. It's okay to actually say those things. And the more honest you are with communicating those things about yourself and how you move, the more you'll begin to see whether or not the job is or is not for you. I think oftentimes when we walk into looking for jobs, we look for jobs as if we only need them. Remember, they need you too. The job listing said that you applied to the job because they wanted something you have, but you have something they want, right? That's why you're there. That's why they chose you for that interview. You told the best narrative on your resume, and they needed the skill set that you have. Remember, everything else is negotiation in between. So Kelly said, how do you go about if you fail and your manager no longer gives you the same responsibilities as before? Yes, exactly. Now remember your value. So if you go about failing, your manager doesn't give you the same responsibilities as before, I would encourage you to have an open conversation with your managers, right? I think we underestimate conversation because, again, we don't want them to tell us something that we didn't want to hear, or it will force us to make a decision we necessarily aren't ready to make, right? But I think the first step is to have a conversation, especially if your manager has an open door policy, especially if your manager is ready to talk. Oftentimes those are spaces that we actually have a little bit more control because we can say what it is that we want and come from a space of confidence about that. Like, hey, I know I messed up there, but so what are the next steps to do things differently? I see that those responsibilities were taken off my plate. Is there any particular reason why? Right? Managers they can answer some questions too, right? If a manager is like your coach, it is not like your parent. And if it is, and that's not a space as to which you thrive, then you should be looking for a space as to which you can thrive. Oh, no problem, Margaret. No problem. No problem. Oh, that's a good question. Anyone here has examples of how they managed the failures with your managers? Yeah. Oh, no problem. Yes, definitely want to hear about recovery. Yep. Remember, it's not like if you go to if you're interviewing with a company and they don't expect you to fail, then do you actually want to work there? Again, remember, jobs are transactional relationships. You guys each has something that each other wants. And I think start taking that approach when you're talking about your job search. Ah, that's a good question. How do you manage your peers' perception of you after you fail? That's a good question, right? One first step, process the emotion of how you feel, right? Because oftentimes you can be, you're reflecting what you think they think about you. First off, process that emotion first. You can process that emotion and then take ownership for your portion of that, right? And when we're talking about perception, is the perception is they don't want to work with you anymore or something like that? Because at the end of the day, everyone fails. So own your feelings first. Let your actions reflect your ownership of the feelings that you have, and let your actions reflect the change behavior that you'll have from learning from that failure. Because that can oftentimes change perception. But you don't get into the habit of trying to chase. You don't get into the habit of trying to change people's perception about you, especially if it's related to work. Your work should be a good reflection of that. And you don't need to be chasing your peers' perception of you, especially when they don't influence your paycheck. Oh, that's a good idea. Yep. Bring the peers into your community of learning. That's great. That's great. What do you do? Okay, so Christina says, what do you do when you have a manager who micromanages and won't give you the space to fail or is hyper vigilant of little mistakes? Um, I'm gonna tell you what I would do. When you start to recognize that, you can have a conversation with your manager, and then you might need to think to yourself, is this somebody that you can be successful under? The language surrounding whether or not you're ready to make a choice to move always needs to be on the table. An option for you to leave is always on the table, especially if this manager, if you have talked to them before, that nothing has come of that, then I think that is the next step. These are some good questions, man. These are some great questions. Great questions. I'm glad that you're asking these questions because I realize that you're taking the pressure off. Like this is relieving you guys of some pressure surrounding your careers and job searches, and I love that. Oh, that's a good side. So Margaret asks, flip side of Christina's question, how do you give reports? Um, how do you give reports space to fail? Give your reports a space to fail, but also manage ramifications. Um, a lot of times that has to do with expectations. Is the what is the expectation? Is it clear? Have you made it clear about what success? What are you looking for? What does success look like if they hit the mark? What does it look? What does it look like when they haven't hit the mark? Right? Because along that space, you should be looking at where they are. Right? This is where you get to step in and know when to step in and be a coach and give more guidance and knowing when to lay off and let them finish. Right? So really is if you can give them a space to fail, then excuse me, giving them a space to fail is about one, define having the understanding, making sure they understand the expectations, and number two, if they fail at whatever task that they're at, is learning how to coach them back up. Right, really sitting them down and having a conversation with them to say, hey, this is where you messed up, these are some things I see you can do better. Right, give them a space to fail and give them a space to recover. Remember, we're talking about the recovery. Anytime you create a space to fail, you have to give a space of recovery. That's where they get to learn from that failure. I think oftentimes we forget that portion is that the learning starts in the recovery process. This is another question is, do you have any advice on how to find or join a community? Women in product has a lot of communities, right? So I think Anna did. If I did, I pronounce your name correctly because I mispronounced mine. Anna, the first thing I would do is look at the form that you're already in, which is Women in Product, and to see which communities you can join. Right. I think that'd be a great thing for you. Right. Start where you are. Meet yourself where you are. Nyla. Okay, this is a good one. Also flipping it a bit. Do you ever find that people who win may not be learning from it? Like they're cleared the goal and are moving on instead of deeply reflecting about what led to that. Depends. Remember, winning is a spectrum. Winning all the time is a spectrum, right? There are some people who are just winning and aren't taking any time to reflect. And there are people who win who take a lot of time to reflect. So I think that's really depending on the person, the type of personality that they have, right? I think people often say that people get like really complacent when they start winning. It depends. This is a great conversation, by the way. I'm really loving this chat. Meg, what you feel about it? How do you feel about this? How did everybody feel about what's going on in the chat? How are you guys vibing with this?
Yeah, I myself learning from all the questions because these questions are something we internalize, but we never actually talk them out. Yeah, these are
I
great.
agree.
Feeling good. Any strategies
It
anybody has
is so
used?
good to know, Christina. It's good to know others feel fear of failure too. It is. We all are, I want you guys to understand, we are all walking around here with imposter syndrome. We are all walking around here scared to fail. We are all walking around here sometimes being perfectionists. And it's time, if you don't learn anything today, take the pressure off. If I can leave anything with you, is take the pressure off and allow yourself to breathe and experience life however it shows up. Oh, that's a good question, Mega. Any strategies anyone has used to bounce back after failure? Right. No one is going to die. It's not that bad. Oh, that's a good idea, Anna, to talk to yourself in third person. Yes, I agree with that. And learn to balance input from others. Sometimes you need to quiet the noise around you and listen to yourself. That's where comes understanding your gut, right? Feeling your gut. What am I trying to say to me? And sometimes that requires you to tune everyone out and tune in. Oh, that's good, Samantha. Oh, Nyla, I like that. Stress is like a tea kettle. Yes, Samantha, I'm not responsible for others' perspectives of my abilities. Well, you guys, I just want to let you know that this has been a spectacular workshop. And I thank you guys for letting me have some time in your day, um, and understanding why we need spaces to fail, how we can create spaces for ourselves to fail, and taking the pressure off. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, and have a great rest of your conference. And please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn because I want to connect with everybody. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you so much, Kenyetta. And thank you,
Bye.
everyone, for the interaction. Thank you.